We are getting closer and closer to the launch of Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and I'm excited for it for one big reason: story. I truly believe no one does Call of Duty story better than Treyarch. Some of the best stories ever have been Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2, and one of the big reasons for that is one of my favorite characters of all time, and I think a fan favorite character, and that is, of course, Frank Woods. Frank Woods, being completely gritty and a staple of the Black Ops series, has been in quite literally all of the Black Ops games except for one, Call of Duty Black Ops 3. But when we actually look at his story moving forward, moving into Call of Duty Black Ops 6, there's a couple of things you need to know. First of all, not all of his story is canon, and in this video, that is exactly what I'm going to give you. What is all of Frank Woods' story going into Call of Duty Black Ops 6? So that way, you can know where his story came from and know where it is going moving forward. So in other words, this is the full story, or the full timeline, of Frank Woods so far.
You can't kill me!
March 20th, 1930. Frank Woods was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where he ran away from his home as a young child and was forced to rely on his street smarts and instincts to survive, until later in his life, where he joined the United States Marine Corps, which he held much combat experience during the Korean War. Eventually, this led him to a great reputation and eventually got recruited to the CIA, specifically into their Special Activities Division. And this brings us to the events of Black Ops 1 on April 17th, 1961. This is where we first see Frank Woods in action. He is alongside Bowman, Alex Mason, and another operator called Carlos. They were in Cuba, specifically in the Bay of Pigs invasion. Why were they there? They were there for one reason: to assassinate Fidel Castro. And as they work their way through the compound and eventually working their way to there, they finally pull off the kill shot, specifically Alex Mason taking it. However, as they didn't know at the time, it was a body double. The person that they shot was not Fidel Castro, and they are sent then to escape, and they do, including Frank Woods, but one person doesn't: Frank Woods' friend, colleague, and fellow soldier, Alex Mason. There's actually a little bit of a blank space between the year 1961 and 1963 when Alex Mason eventually escapes from Vorkuta and rejoins the CIA, when Frank Woods teams back up with them and goes into the USSR.
Whiskey, come back.
Go X-Ray.
Soyuz 1 launch is imminent. We're on our way. Over.
Roger.
Running out of time, Mason. Let's go.
So in the USSR, Alex Mason and Frank Woods are sent there for a couple of reasons. First of all, to retrieve the captured CIA asset known as Grigory Weaver. Now, for this, we end up getting there a little bit too late, and Kravchenko stabs him in the eye. Now, after we save Grigory Weaver, there's two other things that need to be taken care of. The missile needs to be stopped that they are planning on launching, as well as Kravchenko and Dragovich are believed to be at this compound. So if we can take them out while this is going on, that is just a bonus. And we actually believe that we did take out Kravchenko. After this mission, it was believed that Kravchenko was dead. Now, as we know, that was not the case, but Kravchenko and Dragovich instead then escaped, but we were able to stop the missile. So between the years 1963 to 1968, there is a giant gap. We don't know what happens with our characters at this point. But in the year 1968, we move into Vietnam.
Woods, you look like having shit.
I'm so hot for shit, Joe. It's not, baby.
Now, 1968 is an incredibly important era for Frank Woods. There's several things that happen at this time that are very, very important. First of all, they are in Vietnam assisting Jason Hudson and the MACV SOG team. Now, some things that they do is, number one, they go to Hughes City to search for the Defector, a Russian agent that is said to give them information on something known as Project Nova. Now, as we think, this Defector is none other than Viktor Reznov, who was in Vorkuta with Alex Mason. As we find out, Alex Mason was dreaming, essentially daydreaming, about Viktor Reznov the entire time. Now, that dossier that they find in Hughes City eventually leads them to Laos, giving them more information on Project Nova, specifically giving them information on a crash site, which is a shot-down Soviet cargo plane, which, let's just say, things don't end up going so well, and Dragovich and Kravchenko once again end up getting the upper hand.
Dragovich. Kravchenko.
It's been too long, Mason. We must make up for lost time.
So Bowman, Mason, and Woods all end up getting captured, and I have to say this sequence probably leads to one of the most intense and maybe best cutscenes ever in a Call of Duty game. It is absolutely iconic. If you played the games before, you know what it is, but here it is in case you missed it.
Just want to end
You
this.
don't mean that, Bowman.
Fuck you, Charlie.
Bowman, don't.
You dead American.
Последний шанс. Играй или умирай.
You don't scare me. Communist piece of shit.
Bowman! Bowman! You fucking son of a bitch!
Next.
I'm gonna kill you all!
Don't you touch me!
What? Shit.
Fuckers. We're gonna make them pay. You! No talk. Play! What's the plan?
I'm thinking.
No talk!
One chance, Mason. We'll take it.
Okay. Bang! You can't kill me! You shoot, GI, you shoot! Fuck! This time, do it! Inline!
Ready.
Play. Bang!
6 and 8 o'clock.
So that was the end of Joseph Bowman, but not our two other characters who were still trapped in Laos. So from here, Frank Woods and Alex Mason managed to escape and steal an enemy hind. When they do so, they are able to then take this hind all the way to one of Kravchenko's bases inside of Laos. And as we can see here, the Viet Cong are working alongside the Russians, so that is why we have both of these kind of forces within this one place. Now, upon getting to Kravchenko's compound, Kravchenko gets the upper hand on Mason. That doesn't mean Frank Woods isn't ready.
Not this time, American.
You again.
I should have killed you in Vorkuta.
Got you now, you son of a bitch. You die in the city.
So Frank Woods stabs Kravchenko, they both jump out the window, and then we see an explosion. From here, after this point, we assume that Frank Woods is dead. He is not in the rest of Black Ops 1, never to be seen again until later. Because as we find out from Frank Woods himself, that isn't quite what happened.
I was MIA and but your old man thought I was dead. After all that shit Kravchenko did to him. The numbers, Reznov ain't stuck in his head. He had no idea it was real. How the fuck could he? Kravchenko, when I sliced that bastard open, he saved everyone's ass. But he comes to first. Boom. Welcome to the Hanoi Hilton. 6 months later, they shipped me over to Da Nang. And this fucking place made the Hilton look good. Lost 17 of my group. By 72, it was just me. I was not gonna die in a fucking swamp!
That of course brings us to 1972, when finally Frank Woods was able to escape being a POW. Now again, there's about a 3-year gap before we are reintroduced to some missions that Frank Woods did for the CIA. This is actually not in Black Ops 1 or 2, but rather a game called Black Ops Declassified. So we'll say most of the missions throughout Black Ops Declassified don't have very much sway within the universe of Black Ops, but one thing that they do is go into Mount Yamantau and end up stopping Dr. Frederick Steiner's protege, and essentially that's about it until a little bit later. But again, we will get into that in a little bit later on in that timeline. So working our way back to that timeline, we are now in Black Ops Cold War, which takes place in the year 1981, which you may have noticed is 10 years before the events of Black Ops 6. And I will tell you that these next 10 years are going to be the most important for the story of Frank Woods moving into Call of Duty Black Ops 6. By the way, if you're liking these type of videos, you like the story videos, be sure to hit that like button. And let me know down in the comments what character you'd like to see me cover next. Anyway, 1981. So it's January 12th, 1981, when our CIA members, including Alex Mason, Frank Woods, and of course our new member, Russell Adler, are in Amsterdam to take down a terrorist leader known as Arash Kadivar, who then tells us about another terrorist who is on an airstrip who we need to take care of.
We got Arash.
Should have freed the hostages when he had his chance!
Hostages? It was never about the hostages. His plan is already underway. You won't be able to stop him this time.
Stop who?
Perseus.
Bullshit. Perseus is dead.
So this is where we first hear about Perseus, and then all our good guys, Alex Mason, Frank Woods, Russell Adler, all get brought in to speak to the president on the matter of Perseus, and they are essentially told that they need to be taken care of. So in the next mission that Frank Woods is sent on, he actually goes in alongside Bell, a mysterious agent that is kind of working alongside Russell Adler. As we know, he is a brainwashed Russian agent, but that's a whole other story. And if you want to check that out, click the link down below and check out Russell Adler's full story, just like this video. So Frank Woods is sent in with Bell, and they end up working their way into a Russian facility specifically to find out about something called Operation Greenlight, a situation where Perseus is trying to use American-made nukes against the world, arming them, and is going to level a good portion of Europe. Now, it turns out that this is something that the CIA knew about and didn't tell anyone. And needless to say, Frank Woods was a little bit mad at Jason Hudson.
What else are you hiding? Maybe I can knock the truth out of you.
You might want to rethink that, Woods.
Everybody stand down.
So eventually Russell Adler talks Woods down and they all start working together again. And in the next mission, Frank Woods and Alex Mason get sent into somewhere that we know all too well, somewhere by the name of Mount Yamantau. You might recognize it from what we've talked about before. Now this time they are going in to retrieve the mainframe computer to get information on Perseus. And by the end of the mission, they successfully do so with the help of Dmitry Belikov. Now, to be quite honest with you, the story of Frank Woods and Alex Mason really isn't progressed whatsoever throughout Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. It is more so a story about Russell Adler and Bell and the other characters and their stories. However, Frank Woods and Alex Mason are kind of there as supporting characters that are just there to kind of enhance the story and show that Russell Adler is working with the CIA, including Jason Hudson and themselves. And by the very end of the game, they end up assisting Adler in a way where they pull through with Bell and they end up being able to stop Perseus. Now, I want to be clear, they stopped Perseus in the year 1981, and we're going to come back to Perseus, but before we do, something else happens shortly after that in the year 1982, and that is the CIA moving in and taking out a cartel leader, a leader by the name of Jose Luis Menendez in the year 1982. So Frank Woods and Alex Mason in the final mission of Black Ops Declassified taking place in 1982 are sent assassination orders for the leader of the Menendez drug cartel by the name of Jose Luis Menendez. They are also told to leave his son, Raul Menendez, who don't worry, we'll come back to, alone. Let him get away and just take out the leader of the cartel. And that's exactly what they do.
It's his son.
As you can see, after the year 1981, Alex Mason and Frank Woods were kind of taken off the detail of Perseus and put onto the Menendez drug cartel. However, their friend and teammate Russell Adler is taken hostage by someone known as Stitch, a new member of Perseus. And once again, our good guys, specifically Frank Woods, is brought in to help him out once again. Why? Because he is believed to be held captive in Laos. Now, there's a really cool thing about this cutscene. Laos is the same area where Frank Woods was originally captured in Black Ops 1. And as you see Frank Woods flying the helicopter in the background, you can actually see the same crash site that we earlier talked about in this video. But as we know, it turns out that Stitch wasn't actually hiding Russell Adler there whatsoever. Russell Adler had been taken to Verdansk. So, because Russell Adler is Frank Woods' friends, he follows through and stays on the case. Keep in mind this is in the year 1984, but our characters move into Verdansk and end up finding Russell Adler hidden in the hospital and coming to his rescue. But it was a little too late because at the point that Frank Woods got there, Stitch had already got to Adler, and he had been brainwashed, in a very similar way that Alex Mason was brainwashed in Black Ops 1. But by the very end of the seasonal story of Black Ops Cold War, they end up being able to reverse the brainwashing on Russell Adler, and in turn, they are able to get back on Stitch. So our main crew, including Alex Mason, Jason Hudson, and Frank Woods, are all here together working alongside each other to put a stop to Stitch, and that's exactly what they do by the very end. So this is one of the most important things to know moving into Black Ops 6. So that took place in 1984. That is the last time we see Russell Adler, Frank Woods, and Alex Mason together, because Black Ops 2's story takes place 2 years later in 1986, and Russell Adler has nothing to do with it, but rather Frank Woods and Alex Mason and Jason Hudson all do. So speaking of which, the 1986 part of the story begins when Alex Mason is approached after retirement, meaning he retired sometime between 1984 and 1986. But he is approached by Jason Hudson saying that his best friend Frank Woods has been captured. And at this point, he promised his son that he would stay in retirement, but as we know, Alex Mason said, this is for Uncle Frank.
You already know Jason Hudson.
What are you doing here?
Yesterday, Sergeant Woods led a covert team to take on an arms smuggling ring in Angola. This morning, we lost contact.
So go get him, CIA. Why are you here? Castro and the Russians are all over Angola. We can't go in. The CIA have buried the mission. Woods and his squad no longer exist.
We got whatever you need, Mason. Name it.
David can stay with Jenny, like before. She loves having him. He'll be fine.
Dad, you said you'd never go back to the army. You promised me.
It's Uncle Woods, son. He'd do it for me.
So Alex Mason and Jason Hudson move in to find out that Frank Woods has been captured and is once again the sole survivor of the POWs that were captured by someone by the name of Raul Menendez, the son of Jose Luis Menendez, who they'd taken out previously. So they rescue Frank Woods, and now they have a new mission, and that being Raul Menendez. So they are actually sent into Afghanistan, where they don't find Raul Menendez, but find someone who Frank Woods is also very familiar with, someone by the name of Lev Kravchenko.
Fuck! You believe in an eye for an eye? Huh?
So yes, the same Lev Kravchenko that Frank Woods jumped out of the window with in Black Ops 1 and then held him captive. So needless to say, Frank Woods really doesn't like this man. But as it turns out, Raul Menendez has the Mujahideen in his pocket, and they are then captured and thrown out in the desert. And the only person we know who came to save them may very well be Viktor Reznov, the person that died back in Vorkuta. At least that's what Alex Mason says. On the other hand, Frank Woods doesn't believe that whatsoever. But anyway, they were rescued, and still on the case of Raul Menendez. This is where things get wild. Frank Woods obviously hates Raul Menendez because he'd been captured by him and held in that shipping container that we saw earlier. So they are actually sent in to take out and assassinate Raul Menendez. They are sent in to Nicaragua, where Raul Menendez is living at the time with his sister, Josefina. And as soon as Frank Woods sees Raul Menendez, he loses it and throws a grenade at Raul Menendez. However, it doesn't end up taking out Raul Menendez. It takes out his sister, Josefina. But what's super weird about all of this is after they all get up out of the explosion, they are told by Jason Hudson that indeed the grenade killed Raul Menendez, and he is one of the soldiers inside a body bag.
Frank, you okay?
Get him out of here.
What happened, Hudson? Where's Menendez?
That's him, in a body bag. From this point on, the day never happened.
So this becomes even more weird when we look at what happens next. So we fast forward to the year 1989 during the Panama City invasion. They are going in to capture someone by the name of Manuel Noriega, the same person that was once again in Nicaragua, that was helping none other than Raul Menendez. But we don't know that at the time. So we end up capturing Manuel Noriega, but apparently there is someone else that we need to go after. We are told that by, once again, Jason Hudson. So we go up and get on a perch, and us, playing as Frank Woods, look over a vast strip of area, and we see someone come out hooded. We are told that this person is Raul Menendez, someone who we already thought was dead, but we are told to take the shot and shoot him in the head. As it turns out, this was a trap. What had happened is Raul Menendez somehow got his hand on David Mason and used David Mason, Alex Mason's son, as leverage to get Alex Mason to walk out on the strip pretending to be him, and using that leverage to tell Jason Hudson to make Frank Woods take the shot. And as we know, this is what happens next.
Mason!
Fool.
You bastard!
Menendez!
So what we just saw is canon. Frank Woods getting shot in the knees and being crippled is canon moving forward into Black Ops 6, including the next thing that happens with Raul Menendez as well. He then goes after Jason Hudson, which I always thought was very odd because Jason Hudson has kids, Frank Woods didn't, and they gave them the choice between the two, but Jason Hudson sacrifices himself, potentially maybe feeling guilty for what happened, but as we know, he is also dead. He is told Frank Woods and David Mason that they are going to suffer for the rest of their life, the way that he has suffered because of the death of his sister and everything else that went on throughout the rest of his life. And that is the last that we see of Raul Menendez. And in fact, that is the last thing that happens before the year 1991. So moving forward into the year 1991 is when Black Ops 6 takes place, and what we know is that Frank Woods is indeed in a wheelchair. He is going to essentially be the comms man for Russell Adler and our various other characters, but also we know that these characters have gone rogue, looking for the CIA mole, the same mole that may be responsible for the death of his best friend, Alex Mason, as well as Jason Hudson. And that is what we have moving forward into Black Ops 6. And oh, one other thing. It has essentially been confirmed that not necessarily the rest of the things that happen moving forward, for example, in Black Ops 2 in the year 2025, where we see old Frank Woods in the kind of retirement home in the vault, that may not be canon. Raul Menendez in 2025 may not be canon. Just everything up until the year 1991 is canon. And that is why everything that we've looked at so far is the full story and the full timeline of Frank Woods so far.
You can't kill me!